And it is, thank you. And it is my great pleasure and honor to welcome you to Bell School. I would like to welcome and introduce Kathy Pearson. You'll stand up, Kathy. Kathy will be the vice chair of the Bell PTA next year. Both Kathy and I have fifth graders who will be entering Bell next year. So please feel free to call either of us with your questions. And since we both have fifth graders, we'll be right there along with you. This evening is the first of two fifth grade parent orientations. The second will be held on May 23rd at 7:45 p.m. in this auditorium and will be the forum for your specific questions. Flyers were sent home in the fifth grade backpack and are also in the rear of the auditorium. If you have not yet done so, please sign up and attend. Tonight, you will hear from representatives from four groups that make Bell work as a school: the students, the teachers, the administration, and the parents. As you will hear tonight, each one of these groups performs a distinct but integral role, which is then interwoven with the others to form a whole which is vibrant, creative, and nurturing. How many of you are going to be new to Bell next year? Whoa. As you probably expect, the role the parents play in middle school is different from the role they play in elementary school. It is no less important. Numerous studies have shown the importance of the role that parents play in the school community. A new generation of evidence, the family is critical to student achievement. Henderson and Berman, 1995, cites 85 studies documenting the importance of family involvement. Some of the benefits for students that result from parental and family involvement are higher achievement, regardless of socioeconomic status, higher self-esteem, improved behavior and decreased antisocial behavior, improved communications, improved decision-making and problem-solving skills, and, of crucial interest to us, middle school and high school students whose parents are involved usually make better transitions, sustain quality of work, and develop realistic future plans. I echo what a middle school teacher said at open house one year. If we have any illusions that now, as parents of middle school students, we can take a step back, we are wrong. It is now time to take a step forward. It is now time to become more involved in our children's lives. It is now time to become their advocates and their support in these next years. I know I'm preaching to the converted. This wonderful turnout is evidence of the dedication that you have as parents. How are we part of our child's school experience at the middle school level? There are as many answers to that question as there are children who will attend. I would, of course, be derelict in my duty if I did not mention that one way you can become involved is through the PTA. I have placed, well, I haven't yet, I will, a sign-up sheet in the back of the auditorium. Put a sign-up sheet up there. A few board positions are still open. This summer, you will receive a volunteer form in the mail, and you can place your name on volunteer lists and may be called on during the year. Now, this is the Bell page of the district calendar. And you see, there are almost 150 names here, and this is the tip of the iceberg. Hundreds of Bell parents volunteer every year. Projects range from the Bell Theater Company to Halloween window painting, to socials, to cultural enrichment programs. But rest assured, there will be a special and unique way that each of you will find or create to be part of your child's school experience, be it through the PTA or otherwise. Communication between the school and parents is important and somewhat different at the middle school level. Brace yourselves. Nothing comes home in the backpack. Start reading your mail. All communications are mailed. The PTA has 2 publications. The Bell Bulletin. This is a monthly newsletter that keeps you up to date on the who, what, where, when, sometimes why. It's very short but very informative. The Bell Buzz. It's a magazine format. It's published 3 times a year, and it focuses on issues pertinent to this age group. In the fall, at Open House, you can purchase a school directory, which also includes the student handbook. This is where you can turn to learn all the new rules. For example, if your child is homesick in middle school, the protocol differs from elementary. In middle school, you both call the school in the morning and send in a sick note. There are a few of these little tricks you have to read the fine line. Your student will also receive a student agenda next fall, which also has a section which includes rules and regulations. Much of this information can also be found on the Bell webpage, www.chappaqua.k12.ny.us. Please take a few minutes to browse the Bell webpage. You can find information there on school policies and procedures, along with information on sports, activities, teams, PTA minutes, and even snow day announcements. During the school year, you will also receive a variety of mailings from the school, including, I'm just showing this to you, things like the after-school enrichment brochure. PTA meetings remain an important communication vehicle. Due to the shortage of space at Bell next year, all of our PTA meetings will be evening meetings held in this room. Please come. We anticipate that we will address a number of timely community topics that impact our middle school population. You are all also invited to attend Bell's next PTA meeting on May 30th at 9 a.m. We're still able to have a morning meeting this year. The topic is Bell's response protocol, managing school and community anxiety in a post-Columbine era. It will be an informal conversation with administrators Ken Mitchell, our principal, Frank Zamperlin, one of our vice principals, and Martin Fitzgerald, one of our other vice principals. In 1997, when I first came to one of these orientations, there is no question I was in a state of panic. There have been a few moments when, as a parent, I have stopped and thought, what have I let myself in for? Middle school, adolescence. It was a moment on a par when I attended my first infant care class and learned the shocking facts and secret mysteries of infant care. Therefore, I share with you 3 secrets I've learned about middle school. Secret number 1. I always knew I had a few minor concerns. When one of my older sons turned 13, I went in his room, wished him a happy birthday, gave him a hug, and told him how excited I was to be his parent as a teenager. My child got very upset. You may be excited to be my parent as a teenager, but I am not excited about becoming one. Have you been to a mall lately? Trust me, this was a rhetorical question. Have you seen teenagers? Have you heard them talk? Secret number 1, it is pretty normal for you and your child to have a few concerns. It is not, however, at all necessary to panic. Secret number 2, as remarkable as kids' phenomenal physical growth is at this age, and I will just interject that I have a child who was shorter than I when he entered and is now over 6 feet tall. In 3 years, they grow. Their intellectual and emotional maturation is even more impressive. There will be wonderful moments when you step outside of yourself and marvel that it is your child who has his very own, well thought out, reasonable opinions about everything from capital punishment to gene therapy and cloning to nuclear warfare. And brace yourselves again. You are somehow expected to have spent as much time and energy thinking about these subjects as they have. Secret number 2, this age, this bridge to adulthood is a joy. This is one of the most exciting ages to parent a child. Secret number 3, my last secret. There is a lot of information and help out there for us as parents about these middle school years. Since so many of you are first-time Bell parents, I will mention a number of years ago, PTA Parent Ed had as a speaker one of the authors of the book, The Roller Coaster Years. And I'll tell you, the real title is The Roller Coaster Years, Raising Your Child Through the Maddening, Yet Magical Middle School Years. The authors are Charlene C. Giannetti and Margaret Sagarese. I've enjoyed flipping through it. There are many other excellent books on this age group in the library. But please look also to the people who are here tonight, our fellow parents, our students, our teachers, and our administrators as resources along our middle school journey. And now it is my distinct honor to introduce a superb middle school resource, our revered principal, Dr. Kenneth Mitchell.
This was not a planned segue. This was very coincidental. I'd like to begin metaphorically. How many of you have been on a roller coaster? Raise your hand, don't be shy. Not everyone, okay. Some of you have been on maybe some rough train rides or rough plane rides, or I know some of you are reluctant to raise your hands. I think most people have the sense of a roller coaster. Now I looked at a few shots of roller coasters. Take a look at this particular image. Where is it? You can imagine the click, 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 click of that chain pulling you to the top of the roller coaster. And this is where you are right now. Looking down that first, I don't know a lot about roller coasters, but I assume they may be called trails or links or pathways, but you're looking down that first pathway. And on a roller coaster ride, you can imagine, if you haven't been on one, that there are ups and there are downs. There are moments of unpredictability, there's lots of surprises, but there are more moments of exhilaration, great joy, and when you finish that roller coaster ride, you're glad that you did it, and also you're a little glad that it's over. And for many of you who raised your hand, you're going back on the roller coaster again. Now there will be some passengers on the roller coaster who will put their hands in the air and reach out for things, maybe even stand up on the roller coaster, even though the sign says do not stand, even though there's a bar overhead and they might have a problem if they don't sit down. Some people might even get sick on the roller coaster when they get off. Some people will be afraid on the roller coaster. And I'm talking about two types of passengers on this roller coaster. Mom and Dad and the children. Now I am currently on the roller coaster. I have a 6th grader going into 7th grader. It's the second time for me on this roller coaster. I have a 10th grader as well. And it smooths out in the high school. Where are my 10th graders? But I assure you that even though you'll have your dips, you will have your more moments of joy on this ride. Now, tonight, I'd like to frame the overall presentation with some guiding questions. By the time you leave tonight, you should, to some extent, be able to answer these questions. The first one, what kind of educational experience will the school provide for your child? The teachers will attempt to answer that, the counselors and the students. How will this be different? Already Kathy alluded to some of the differences. And one of the most significant differences relates to the radical changes, developmental changes that your children will experience. Kathy talked about size. 50% of adult body weight is achieved during the middle school years. They will grow on an average 3 to 4 inches per year and will experience weight gains. Females anywhere from 10 to 15 pounds per year, and males anywhere from 10 to 30 pounds per year. So you just imagine the middle school in September. We have a certain degree of mass in the building. Now it's June. Obviously, it's increased, and we're more crowded in June, even though we may have one less student than we were in September. Tonight you'll hear professional beliefs of staff and the values. And this is a question that I've heard from middle school from parents over the years. How will the individual needs of my child be known? How will you know my child in this school that is so large, where there's close to 1,000 students? We actually will have 980 students this fall. That's a big school. But you'll hear from the teachers that we have a number of mechanisms that will enable us to get to know your child. And finally, how do we help make this a smooth transition? And you'll hear stories, you'll hear examples of how we do that. We've begun already. We've begun by communicating through these sessions. This is actually the second session. We had a session for parents who have children with some special needs, and we'll have the question and answer in 2 weeks. And we will have an orientation for families new to the district in August. We will continue to communicate. I'm not going to read this. You should have received a flyer out in the hallway, our mission statement. There are some articles. But I want to be clear that we work to balance academic excellence with the need to address the developmental needs of young adolescents. This is one of the questions that parents will always ask. Why would you spend time on social and emotional development? Because if we don't spend time on social and emotional development with young adolescents, then they're not going to achieve their academic goals. There needs to be a balance. Briefly, National Middle Schools Association has identified 10 essential elements of effective middle schools. The first, attention to developmental needs. I talked about the physical changes. They will go through, obviously, social and emotional changes, but they will also go through tremendous cognitive changes. They come in, many of them concrete thinkers. As they move into the 7th grade, there's a wider range, because some of them developmentally, and it has nothing to do with individual strengths. So to some extent it does, but developmentally, many of them begin to think abstractly sooner than others. Not that they will be at a higher level and will maintain that level, but there's a range of thinking development, not ability, development at that point. They're able to begin to think more abstractly. That's when they begin to argue a little bit more. And that's a good thing, because they're testing their ability to see issues in a more abstract context, but also one in which the issues are gray. They begin to challenge some of your values, and they begin to challenge some basic assumptions that society has about a variety of issues. So you'll hear them challenge you, and it's a good thing. You want to actually engage them, get them to provide evidence for some of their views. All middle schools should have a mission statement. You saw that. You have a copy. Please read it over. Middle schools consider transition not just from 5th to 6th grade, but also from 6th to 7th grade, from 7th to 8th grade, and from 8th to 9th grade. Middle schools have interdisciplinary teams with teachers working together. You'll hear more from the teams about that. Prospective middle schools have what we call a comprehensive core curriculum, where students have a variety of experiences. They get to explore some strengths. If they have areas in the arts or areas in science, they have opportunities to have some non-traditional experiences. The curriculum should provide a range of experiences. Instructional approaches. Many of us attended schools where there was a traditional lecture format. Young adolescents have a very difficult time sitting for 80 minutes listening to someone lecture. I think most adults will, and you will probably about half an hour wish that you were somewhere else. But young adolescents need to move. They need to interact socially. We've learned a lot about learning. There's been a lot of neuroscience research to illuminate how we can better engage our young adolescents in learning. And we talk about this regularly, as I say. Comprehensive guidance services. This is where we help to maintain that balance between emotional, social, and cognitive development. Appropriate student activities. So we have opportunities for students to take risks in safe settings and explore their strengths in non-structured situations and explore some of the areas which maybe they aren't naturally strong but would like to see how far they can go, how well they can do. One of the questions that we always ask teachers when we hire them is, tell us about the developmental needs of the young adolescent. Good middle schools have teachers who understand that. And obviously, good middle schools should have principals who understand a middle school, understand young adolescents and middle school program and philosophy. This year we've identified two goals. The first is planning for a transition to a 5A program in second middle school. This is going to involve faculty, parents. We have a number of committees that have already begun. Elementary staff, elementary administrators. And we will have regular reports, presentations throughout the year. So please attend those. The second is to maintain the quality of our program within the context of overcrowded conditions. And I will briefly address some ways that we're going to attempt to do that. This seems simplistic, but a few years ago, students carried backpacks around the building, and it just adds to the mass in the hallways. So we've restricted our backpack use, and we will continue that policy. And you will see that your children will come home with very large backpacks. They need to be managed, not just by the school, but they need to be managed by the home as well, and by the student. We have purchased a second set of textbooks, so students should have text at home. There's a text in the classroom. Again, periodically check their backpacks. Feel free to come to school, go to their lockers, clean out their lockers with them, help them manage. I see parents here in the evening. I see parents here sometimes 7, 8 o'clock at night with their child helping organize. And that is a skill. I know all of us need some organizational skills. I should show you my desk. Staggered dismissal. At the end of the day, we have the sixth graders who will maintain this. The sixth graders are dismissed 3 minutes prior to the seventh and the eighth graders. Again, this allows for traffic flow out of the building. We've added a fourth lunch period, and we are actually moving part of our 7th and 8th grade lunches to the rear of this auditorium. You notice there's a divider. We will have music lessons on this side, so the people who are having lunch will be entertained. No, actually, we just need the space, but they'll sit in the back, and they will have lunch. And this is the first time we've had to do this, but we're a little tight down the cafeteria. And consolidation of the homeroom period. We've eliminated homeroom. We've incorporated into one of the classes and extended that period by 5 minutes to minimize the number of periods that students students have to travel throughout the building. We've also, and you'll see a schedule in a little bit, we've overlapped our periods. So out of 1,000 students, we may only have 700 students passing in the hallway at one time, rather than at a bell, dismiss all 1,000 students into the hallway. So they're moving through the hallway, they're sardines. So this has worked out very well. We've done it this year by creating actually a series of schedules within the overall master schedule. And we've added an annex. We're going to be using St. Mary's Church next door for one classroom. That's about a 30, not even a 30-second walk from the side of the building. We'll be using that for health classes. That's just health classes, correct? And we've also taken a few other classrooms and either divided them to create 2 classes out of one, or converted a computer lab into a classroom and moved the computer lab to another space. So we've manipulated space within the building to try to maximize facility use. And those are some of the plans for this year, and I hope that gives you a general understanding of our philosophy as a school and our focus. And now you're going to hear some specific examples from, we're going to actually change the program because Mr. Semmel has arrived, and he's going to talk about the after-school program, and then we will turn this over to guidance. Mr. Semmel is the chairperson of our music department, and he also is the director of our after-school program. So, Mr. Semmel.
Okay, I'm looking forward to rigatoni with the trombone next year. Having the lunchroom right next door to the music. Mix it with that. Okay. Turn to somebody you don't know and tell them something you like, something not illegal, immoral, or fattening that you like to do when you were an adolescent. Go ahead, take 10 seconds to do that. Come on, don't look at her. Think of one thing you enjoy. Okay. Somebody raise a hand and tell me something that somebody else said. Go ahead, go for it. Sleep, okay, that's an important one. Anything else? An activity. Talk on the phone. All right, communication is important, yeah. Swim, sports. Anything else? Yeah. Walking into town, okay. One more. Come on. Yeah, go ahead, go for it. Okay. For some reason, nobody said math, English, science, or social studies. I don't know why. But we recognize part of what we're talking about social development, and a lot of things you mentioned were social development or physical development, whether it be swimming or communicating. There are a lot of things that go with that. And so when the bell rings at 2:05 and 2:07, the school day is not over. We have 3 semesters of after-school activities. You will be getting a booklet like this sometime around Labor Day, and there will be about 18 different courses listed on 3 different days, Tuesdays, Thursdays, or Fridays, with such things as American Red Cross babysitting certification, where youngsters learn CPR and how to take care of infants and can raise their prices for babysitting because they're now Red Cross certified. Chess club, yoga, PC Build It, Fix It workshop, where youngsters will get to actually open up the back of a PC, not yours at home, and put things in or take things out. Acrylic painting, there's a student newspaper, there's a student TV program that's produced by the students. There's a math Olympiad club where the students actually compete in mathematics against other schools. Photography, a community service program, digital painting, drama workshop, model rockets we've had mountain biking courses. These are all activities that the youngsters can do after school. There are 8-week sessions, and there are 3 of those sessions. There's a fall, a winter, and a spring. They're fun. They're 3 days a week, and space permitting, your youngster could be in 2 or 3 of them. The price is right. It's free. One caveat I should make you aware of, when you get this brochure, some of the classes will say limited enrollment because they're limited by the amount of space relative to the activity. For instance, the dark room can only hold so many students, so we have to limit that class. So when you're picking out, when you and your youngster are picking out first, second, and third choices, please make sure you include some classes that obviously don't have enrollment limitations. What we do is that all the applications that are back on time, if a class is oversubscribed, we have a lottery system. We pull classes. So it has happened that somebody wanted 3 classes that were all very small classes and didn't get into them. So that's something to be aware of. The classes change, and they take place on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Now on Mondays and Wednesdays, we have 2 very important things that go on. One is open intramurals in the gymnasium, which change from time to time. Sometimes it could be a basketball shoot. We do a circus arts program where the youngsters learn juggling and skills like that. Could be volleyball. The activities in the gym vary. The other very important thing that happens on Mondays and Wednesdays is that faculty members stay after school to provide extra help for students. So if the student is having trouble with a particular topic, let's say in science or in social studies, the student doesn't have to just bite his nails about it. The student can come in and say, before a test, before a quiz, I think I'm having a problem with this, can you help me? And sometimes students will make an appointment to see the teacher, or sometimes it's on a walk-in basis. But it tends to be, it's not one-on-one necessarily, but it tends to be individualized instruction. And again, it's part of the team philosophy that the student's needs are taken care of on an ongoing basis. We don't wait for a big test or a quiz. The teachers are there to help the students as they need the help. So there's a lot to do. There is a late bus that runs at 3 o'clock, so if your youngster stays for that extra hour for a class or for extra help, your child can still get home on the bus. Anybody have any questions about the after-school program? Great. Okay, thank you very much.
The heart of our middle school is our guidance department. Next year's guidance counselors will be Robin Diddleman and Tim Doyle, and Robin will kick it off.
I'm Robin Dillman, and I'll be one of the 6th grade guidance counselors next year. I'm going to talk a little bit about guidance. I'm going to focus on how we communicate with the students, with the teachers, and with the parents. Our communication with the students starts early. In the beginning of the year, we go into the 6th grade classrooms, and we talk about guidance and how students can use it. We let the students know that they can meet with us individually or in small groups, and we let them know how to sign up for appointments. At that time, we also have them fill out an information sheet for us, and on that they can indicate whether they'd like to have an early appointment with us or whether they have an interest in being in one of our guidance groups. Some examples of our groups that we run are groups about friends and social issues, groups about school issues centered around academics or study skills. We do groups about family issues. We do groups about students who are dealing with a loss of some sort. And really we can do a group about anything. If we find a number of students who have a certain issue in common, we can create a group for them. The way we communicate with teachers is mainly through guidance meetings. We meet with our teams of teachers once every 4 days, once a cycle, and there we have our opportunity to talk with them about our students. We can bring up students that we're concerned about. They can bring up students that they're concerned about. We use that time to share information, to brainstorm ideas, and to come up with plans for ways to help our students with whatever issues that they're having at the time. We also communicate with our teams on an informal basis. We send each other emails, we see each other in the hall, send each other notes, we see each other all the time. And we really work as a team to support the students. Our communication with the parents happens usually started by phone, and you need to call us if you have a question or concern about anything that's going on at school for your child. Often the guidance counselors act as the point person for the team because we do have that access to the team. We meet every week and we see each other every day. It's important to stay in communication with us so that we can address any issue quickly. Also, it's important for you to know that you can communicate to us anything that's going on for your child at home that may affect them here at school. We can relay that information to the team so that we can work together as a team to support your child. Next, Tim Doyle's going to talk a little bit more about guidance, and I look forward to meeting you and your children next year.
I just wanted to talk quickly about the orientation process that we use to get your children ready to come here. And we've already started that process probably back in January or so, when we started thinking about having the 5th grade coming into the 6th grade. We've met with all the 5th grade teachers, and we've discussed each of the students in the whole 5th grade right now to get an idea, a perspective from the 5th grade teachers of who is coming up, to have a little idea when we see a name or a face in the hallways in the beginning of the year, who those children are. And then we, as Dr. Mitchell said, we had the parent night for the special education students last week. We're having this night, and we have a question and answer night on the 23rd to try to help get the parents to feel as comfortable as they possibly can as they come in here. And then we also do a number of things for the children to get them prepared to come here. Starting the end of May, we'll be taking a panel of 6th graders down to the elementary schools and meeting probably a panel of 4 for each class in the elementary school. And they'll talk about their experience in the first year, their first year here, what they were afraid of coming in, what their worries, anxieties were, and how things ended up, how they felt towards the end of the year. And then they'll answer any questions that any of the students might have at that time. And then we'll do that with each of the 3 schools, and that will be at the end of May. Then in the second part of our orientation process is at the very end of school, we have each of the elementary schools bring the 5th grade classes over here during exam week. And we have a group of students that are here ready to give the tours to the students. We introduce the teachers. We say a few words about the after-school program to remind the kids and let them be aware of what goes on in the school. And then some 6th graders will then take small groups of the 5th graders around to get them to feel comfortable about. And so that's right at the last week of school that we do that. In the beginning of July is when the letters go out to say which team each of the students are on for next year. In that letter, you'll also get a team letter, which will give you a list of supplies, and I think somebody's going to talk about it. It'll give you a list of supplies that you need for the first few days of school, and it'll tell you what team that you're on. It won't tell you the sections that you're in. You'll find that out the first day of school. I'll talk about that in a second. After that, what we do is the 2 weeks before school starts, we open up the school. We have a locker ready for the students to try to test lockers, so that one of their big concerns coming in is how do they open a locker. We have a test locker, so you can practice that. You could get ready to use that locker. You could then again go around to the school. You'll know the team that you're on. You'll find where those classes are, so you can get a little bit more familiar with the school and where you're supposed to be that first day. When the first day comes, we try to ease the students in very comfortably. The first day, the 6th grade teachers spend pretty much the whole first day and the first couple of days just getting the students ready and prepared to be in Bell. They take them around. There's not really any formal classes the first couple of days. It's just getting the students to feel comfortable. The teachers will again give them another tour. They'll give them a few activities to get to know each other in their classes, since the students are coming from 3 different elementary schools, and they do a number of different activities to just ease the students into feeling comfortable when they're here. So that's basically how we do the orientation process of the of the fifth graders coming into the school, and you will all, I'm sure, will have plenty of questions, and you'll be able to ask any of those questions to both staff people and students on the 23rd, because there's sixth graders, seventh graders, and eighth graders that will be on those panels, so they can answer you and give you a student's perspective on any questions you might have. So now, Linda Wall, the social worker, is going to say a few words.
I asked him to stay with me so he could help me, because he does some of this. I'm a school social worker here at Bell, and what I'm going to talk about briefly is some of the areas that we work with your youngsters on developing our three themes that run through the school: community, respect, and leadership. Your kids will hear that over and over. We work very hard to get them to understand what those terms mean. And to do that, we do a lot of, I think, really rather innovative and creative things, which your kids really buy into. In the fall, a number of kids go to something called a prejudice awareness workshop.
You didn't know what I was going to hand it.
We take a group of about 12 to 14 eighth graders over to is it Purchase College, and there's a day of activities dealing with diversity and prejudice awareness. Now, what the responsibility of those students when they sign up to go on that is to come back to the school and also bring it to the other students that are there. So it's not just the 12 students that benefit from this program. In years past, we've had the students go into the program, into the classes, and run little activities that they learn that day at the Prejudice Awareness Summit to the 7th and 6th grade classes and other 8th grade classes to help the other students become aware of the diversity issues and prejudice issues that might take place within this school, as well as the whole general idea of prejudice amongst the whole society. We've had guest speakers in, Dr. Leon Bass, who spoke about his experiences and prejudice that's touched his life. And this year we've also brought down the high school, and we've had students from the high school run activities with the 8th grade classes on diversity issues as well.
That was extremely exciting. It was a very rushed job this spring, but we approached the TIDE group and the Alliance for Equality at the high school. They were jubilant. They said, if you don't start doing this work here in middle school, it's very tough when kids get to high school. So we've started that with them, which has been very exciting. We also have initiated, and under Kim and Dr. Anne-Marie Genatino, our psychologist guidance, peer coaching programs where older students coach younger students. This has been very popular. It's usually 8th graders working with 6th graders, but it's a good way to again build this family of community and respect. We have peer mediation programs, which were brand new, and again under Kim's guidance, where we really wanted youngsters to have a role in the disciplinary process. We wanted them to be trained and to really try to work through some problems that other kids would be having. Not major ones, but ones like friendship quarrels, that kind of thing. And it's really helped kids to reach their potential in this area. We also have a lot of organizations. I take out a group called Bell Entertainers. We have about 80 kids that go out once a month to nursing homes and senior citizen centers. It's a sketch. If any parent wants to come with me, this year we had a 6th grade girl who hung spoons from every opening or jutting out piece of her face. The senior citizens loved it. We took a little dog. I usually audition the kids, and I said to the mother and the kid who brought the dog, what does the dog do? And I was told, oh, she just runs around and licks everybody. So we took her, and the senior citizens loved it. We also had 4 6th graders who made an astounding videotape of skateboarding. Now, you might not think that that would sit very well with senior citizens, but the seniors loved it. To see those young bodies and muscles twisting around, they really liked it a lot. We also take kids to something called the Ossining Food Pantry. This is run by a previous middle school principal, and she involves the kids in registering the recipients, in taking down very detailed information about them. They really get to know people below the poverty level. One young man came back and wrote an astounding essay which got him into a major Ivy League college on the basis of his experience with this. So we open this kind of thing up to kids so they can learn and learn firsthand. We also have something called Newcastle Cares, where youngsters work with a town committee. Kids have so risen to the responsibility that we've given them through this medium. They presented to the town board. It looks like we're getting close to getting a skateboard park. Don't say that too loudly because we're still working on it. But the kids have done surveys, have gotten petitions, have written presentations, and some of these youngsters are ones that you would not think might be able to do this, and they've done it. So this is part of what middle school is all about, and I know you're dying to hear from the teachers, but I just want to let you know that we are really going to nurture and foster your kids. We wouldn't be working here if we didn't want to do that. Thank you.
You're hearing quite a bit about some of our programs to address the social and emotional development. This is such a critical time in human development to do this, because I talked a little earlier about cognitive development, but at the time when the individual is beginning to think that there's moral development that is occurring, and it is a critical juncture that schools need to capitalize upon. And that is why you're hearing about that. We will have an open house program in the fall, part of the transitional process. We usually get the sixth grade teachers and parents together first, early on, probably sometime in September or early October, and you'll hear quite a bit about the challenges of the academic program, and you may hear that from students tonight. Before we introduce the teachers, I would like to introduce Frank Zamperman. Frank will be the assistant principal assigned to the sixth grade next year. He will continue with that group through the eighth grade. Our assistant principals stay with the students, so you will know the assistant principal. Well, I hope you don't get to know them too well. Actually, our assistant principals establish very positive relationships with parents because there are a number of committees. So Frank is going to talk a little bit about his role, and then we'll get to teachers' well.
I want to briefly introduce myself. My name is Frank Zamperman. I'm the assistant principal for the incoming sixth grade. This is the face you will see on the other end of the phone, the other end of the emails, with no hair on top. Mr. Fitzgerald is the other assistant principal, and he will be dealing and carrying this sixth grade for the seventh. We try to follow the students straight through their middle school so we can build that relationship. We're not the assistant principals who always deal with that discipline. We look at it as student management. We look at it in more ways than one. But we want to build that relationship with the student so that not only do we have to deal with that discipline aspect, but we want them to come forward to see us and speak with us, communicate with us. And I want you to know that you can communicate also. We work very closely as a team here between the students and the guidance, administration, the parents, and the teachers. Take a look at our website. Take a look at what we have to offer. On my webpage, you'll see a revolving E. Click it. Email me some questions. If I can't get you that answer, I will forward it to the person or persons who can get you that answer. I'm your contact. I'm here to help you. And I hope you're here to help me. So the bottom line is, we're here to help our students. The essence of what you will hear tonight will come from two groups tonight, teachers and the students. And I'm not going to go on any longer. So please listen intently to what they have to say. You're going to hear some wonderful stories about some people doing some wonderful things. Thank you.
We have three representatives from our sixth grade teams tonight. First will be Mark Chipkin. He'll be followed by Bob Ward and then Mary Lynn Kelly-Harris. We're changing the order. Mark Chipkin and Mary Lynn will present together, then Bob Ward.
Hello? Can you hear us? Hello, everybody. Shipkin.
This is Marilyn Caligeris.
We're co-teachers. We teach in the same science class every day, and we've been together for quite a while, and we love doing it.
And hopefully you'll be fortunate enough to have your child in a collaborative class where they have two teachers, because two heads are better than one. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we try to make the school a great place for your kids.
And Mark's going to do a little bit about his own transitioning, and then we're going to spend some time talking about what teachers do to transition the children, some of which Tim has already covered. We'll try to be a little bit specific about that, and then we're going to try to give you some suggestions about what you can do to help the children transition.
First of all, I have been transitioning sixth graders for about 25 years, and it's been a pleasure to do that. I've done it in the elementary schools as we moved over to Bell School, then we moved from Bell School back to the elementary school, and even had to do it at one point when we were teaching inside the church basement in Pleasantville. And all those times we did one basic thing that was important, which was to make sure that the kids felt welcome and felt that they were in a place where they were safe. And I just want to say this, that all the people that you met today are incredibly genuine. And the one thing that I really appreciated when I came to the middle school from the elementary school was the support team that they had here, the guidance people and the social worker, and just all the administration were just incredible, and I think you'll find that to be true. At this point, I think what we'll talk a little bit about is what we do as teachers to be able to make it so that it's a great place for the students.
We're going to do this the old-fashioned way.
Low technology. I will say that I like to look at the sixth grade experience as the wonder years. It's a time when kids are wondering about everything. Like today we dissected an eyeball in class. It was just amazing. I mean, the kids had so many questions. It just go, go, go. I mean, the class could have gone on. And it's just a great time to teach because the kids in sixth grade coming in from fifth grade are just filled with joy and filled with curiosity.
One of the main things we do, as Tim mentioned, is we spend the first few days creating community or building community. So one of the things we do is have the students on a special schedule. They do not follow their regular schedule the first few days of school. We, on Team B, what we might do is we have a group of students stay with one academic teacher for their 4 academic classes while they're learning about the school, the first day of school. And then they might proceed to some of the other academic classes the next few days.
We figure that since none of the teachers have slept, they're probably, the kids are also anxious. And sure enough, even when we serve them a delicious Dunkin' Donuts breakfast, very few kids will eat that the first day. They're so nervous. So what we try to do is to reduce as many variables as possible so that they're just coming in, sitting down, relaxing, we're answering their questions, and making it comfortable for them.
We spend that second day doing some activities with their sections. So they might, for example, make what we call a hand mural, where you outline your hand, and on each of the fingers, put some important fact about yourself. And then some of that might be shared with their section. They're getting to know their section. And then those are placed on a mural outside their classrooms. There are various activities that we do like that, again, to build community, build team, and build section.
And then the third day, what we do is try to get together as a whole team and try to mix the kids together, get to know each other as a team, and try to do some kind of outdoor activities. This year we were able to go to Hog Hill. Next year we're looking for another site and where we can do some kind of group project adventure type activities so the kids get to know each other.
We dedicate those first days to orientation, and the students come in with some common fears. My locker, will I be able to open it? My schedule, will I be able to understand what it is? And will I be able to navigate through the building? So we spend a lot of time on lockers, we spend a lot of time reading the schedule and going over the schedule, and we spend a lot of time walking the students through the building.
The next thing we'll talk a little bit about is what kinds of things you might do to help your child to transition into Bell School.
You're going to expect some anxiety, and acknowledge that they're going to be apprehensive, acknowledge that. But at the same time, try to be enthusiastic. This is an adventure. It may be one of the most wonderful adventures that they ever had. It's certainly going to be the most volatile time, one of the most volatile times in their lives. So be excited about it.
So when they come home and talk about the eye dissection, don't say that was gross. We want to say, yeah, that's great. And how hard it is to say it. That's what you need to do. We need your support.
We want you to become familiar with Bell. We want your students to become familiar with Bell, so come to the building often. Drop by, see us, especially right before school.
Big thing is that locker. If you can get your child to open up, that's like a major rite of passage. So if you can do that with your child, that's the best thing. Everybody get in, they have a practice locker, and do it again and again, get a lock at home. That's a big thing, because the students that have some difficulty with that the first day, that causes a lot of anxiety. So definitely do that one.
Remember, the first two numbers, go to the first two numbers, forget about the third number on the locker. Just wait for the click.
Be positive? Yeah, be positive, of course. I just told you this is a safe place. It's a great place. Matter of fact, a substitute today, and this was probably said to me so I could share this with you, said, you know, I substitute in other schools, and this is the greatest place. The kids are just so nice here. And he had no reason to tell me that. There was nothing that prompted him to do that. And I really believe it. I've talked to many teachers in many schools, and we're very fortunate. I just think we're in a great place at this time. I think that a lot of positive things, as Lyndall mentioned, are going on in the school, and I expect it to be a good roller coaster ride.
We're really looking forward to meeting your students. It's an incredible experience for us. As exciting as it is for them, it's just as exciting for us. So welcome, everybody.
Hello, I'm Bob Ward. I'm one of two teachers in Team J. And I want to say, first of all, I see some very familiar faces out in the audience because I'm the new guy in the block. I just came through 23 years at West Orchard. And this is my first year at Bell School. I think I share a lot in common. I shared in common this year with a lot of the feelings that your children are going to enter the next year. And I want to say one thing. I love Bell School. And from somebody that was so attached to West Orchard, that's a very significant statement. I had a lot of wonderful years working with younger children. Sixth graders are the best. They are simply the best. As a matter of fact, the kids on Team J, they don't get an awful big rise out of me when they complain about each other, because my first reaction is often, I have a very difficult time taking it seriously. When they come up with their little complaints about one another, my first reaction is often to stifle a chuckle, because I think the things they're into, the minor and major squabbles, are very often best handled with a sense of humor. And I've had two girls go through this very same school and out in the big wide world now. Sense of humor is so essential for you and for us in dealing with children of this age. So often they make me laugh. I was asked tonight to address, being a newcomer here, what are some differences between the experiences that are coming from the elementary level and here, particularly in the academic vein. One of the biggest changes that I've noticed is happening right now. It's murder getting them to attend once the warm weather starts. In elementary school, that was never a big problem, but boy, when that warm weather of 90 degrees hit last week, spring is a challenge. So that's what we're facing right now. Other than that, I think a lot of the changes are very, very positive. There's a tremendous excitement about academics. I taught fifth grade for some years at West Orchard, and that's what I loved about the fifth graders too. I think you'll see that first couple years exposure to real heavy learning, substantive knowledge gained in many, many areas, I find excites the kids tremendously. I found it in fifth grade, and I think that carries right over to sixth grade. They are literally open books about being curious about the world. And Hopefully that doesn't wear off before they get to high school, but it's tremendously fun at the sixth grade level. There are some heavier responsibilities. I wouldn't say they get more homework, but I think it's a bit more sophisticated. One area that you'll find a faster turnover that's expected from the teachers is in writing. I compare, for example, my previous five years at West Orchard with third grade. It would take a month to complete a substantive writing assignment with third grade. These kids do them overnight. I couldn't believe it. The quality, I require a weekly essay in science about, from either a TV show. Projects are usually given a little less time during class to put the finishing touches on than you may have had experience with at the elementary level. Some of those may be coming home a little bit more than they did. Hopefully when they come back to us, they aren't done by parents. That's always an issue, but how much do I enter into it? You've got to develop qualities of independence in the kids, and it starts big time in middle school. Think about high school. They're not going to be, parents don't get informed about every little assignment in high school. The kids are expected to take the responsibility of copying the assignment down, finding out about deadlines, and basically finishing that work without any parental involvement. So middle school is the transition in that phase. Some parents are a little surprised that not every little detail about an assignment is sent home. Well, gradually we have to wean you guys off getting so involved with your kids. I hope your involvement is one of support, as Mark and Mary Lynn said, and a lot of people have stressed tonight. I think you'll find you have to get a little less involved in the academics because that's to their benefit. You want them to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. They have a lot of helps given to them. The agenda that was shown to you tonight is a terrific tool for it. It's assignment pad, calendar, message, source, all wrapped up in one. It's a tremendous document. They really keep a lot of things in that agenda. They've got the tools to make it on their own and just help them become independent. They want it. You know your child and just how much independence they can bear. So just try to expand the envelope a little bit more as the year goes along. You have to have a balance there between the support that you've given in the past and the extent of it and what they have to transition to. They may find a need to prioritize some of the extensive activities they get involved in. They're going to learn really for the first time what a heavier academic load looks like. And they may not be able to do all the activities in the past that they've done, and a lot of children cut back a little bit in order to fit in the academics. That would be an ongoing dialogue that you'll be having with the kids about just how many outside activities they can have. I have seen kids cut back on some things. They tend to prioritize and start to focus in on one area, whether it's sports or drama or other interests that they have, and it changes from trying to do everything. It's impossible. You know, I'm not telling you anything new here. You know how packed their schedules are. Well, the academic load gets heavier, and they find they have to prioritize. What do we do to help these things along? I mentioned some things that we give them: the agenda, organization, and the binders. A lot of teams have very good websites that I hope you have a chance to look at. We don't all have them, but the ones that exist have a lot of helpful items on them that keep you tuned into what's going on. I encourage kids to do things like keep things to do the next day lists. That helps them get organized. We help them set up calendars in their agenda. A lot of these things stress the organizational skills that are crucial at this level. Several people already mentioned about the availability that the teachers present to the children. We're there Mondays and Wednesdays regularly, and if kids need after-school help on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we'll make individual appointments to help them on those days as well, to the extent that we can, even Fridays sometimes. So it's a very accessible staff. That's one thing I've been tremendously impressed with here, is the dedication to help this age child that you see in front of you and you see every day at Bell. I'm just overwhelmed by the commitment of my fellow professionals, my peers that work here at Bell. Mark and Mary Lynn referred to, some of the things that the parents can do to support this process. One of the biggest things I can say is relax and enjoy the kids at this particular age. When they come home, what's the best thing that happened to you today? So not all the problems, what's the best thing that happened to you? What's the best thing you learned? I hope that your dialogue with your children at this age is kept on a positive basis. If homework gets to be a problem, put it aside and talk to the guidance counselors. The guidance counselors are fabulous here. I can't tell you what an assistance they've been to me as a new teacher and to all the parents that we deal with. They are so open to children and their needs that, and this is a history that goes way back in Bell. I remember when my children were here, my daughter was basically brought out of a very negative funk that she was in for a while because of some problems with peers by the efforts of a very special guidance counselor who's no longer with us, but who served that function. I see that every day here. Kids know that the guidance counselor's doors are always open to them, and they really do take advantage of it. It's tremendous. Kids, one of the best things they can do is, I got a guidance pass, Mr. Ward. Go ahead, you need it. Sometimes they get taken out of academics, but that's all right. At this age, they need that support. So the guidance department is fabulous. And many times your first communication link is with the guidance department. A little less with teachers, probably we handle more kids. We're not quite as available perhaps time-wise as some of the elementary school teachers may have been. So you'll find right off that the guidance people are very, very good at handling initial concerns. We're open to, a lot of us put our web addresses, even phone numbers on our websites, and are open to phone calls and dialogue with parents. But very often the guidance department serves as an initial contact. So the people are here to help your kids. Yes, things get a little bit more academic, but I know they can handle it. And if we keep a positive attitude with a little sense of humor, just like I was the newcomer this year, I think you're going to find that at the end of next year, you're going to say, I love Bell School. It's only taken 1 year for me to say that, and I hope the same happens for you.
All right, here comes the best part of tonight's presentation, the students. So before I have Mr. Doyle introduce the students, I would just like to acknowledge Ms. Breen. Ms. Breen is the chairperson of our guidance. Why don't you stand up, Mrs. Breen, so everyone sees you? All right, Mr. Doyle, you set?
The first student that's going to speak is Larry Unrein, and he's going to speak on teams and sections, to give you an idea about how the schedule is.
Okay, well, the sixth grade is divided into 4 teams. This year they're called A, B, C, and J, but next year they'll be re-lettered to be A, B, C, and D. And then each team is divided into sections, and like you see up here. And so each team is like on A of A1, 2, 3, and 4. B 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on. And in each class is about 22.5 students. Okay. Oh. And the subjects that you go to class with your sections is social studies, English, science, and math. And then for like special classes like foreign language, music, gym, stuff like that, your sections mix up a little bit. So you'll be with some different kids, but some of the same kids for those classes. And then if you go to a different special, they'll change it a little bit. And then at lunch, your team will eat lunch with another team, so you'll get to see some friends on, so your child will get to see some friends on other teams. And then in some gym classes, some gym classes have like team A and C have gym together, like, and so then you'll get to see, and then in some activities in gym, you'll get to have gym with some of the other students on other teams.
Now Catherine Barnes is going to speak on making friends and some myths that she had heard before she came into the school.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Barnes, and I am from Bell School on Team B in 6th grade, arriving from Grafflin Elementary School. I can remember asking my older brother so many times if it was easy to make new friends. When I came into my first class on my first day of school, I saw one of the people I knew but didn't like and became best friends with her. That proves that it's really not that hard to make new friends. So your children should just relax and everything will be just right. Myths about Bell School that aren't true can be bullies. I haven't run into one the whole year, and I doubt that there are any kids waiting behind every corner to beat somebody up. More myths are peer pressure, drugs, and getting stuck in lockers. All these are virtually impossible if your child understands when to say yes and when to say no. And about getting stuck in lockers, nobody can say it. If anyone is still worried about those or being late or even getting lost, they should walk with a friend or buddy. One more thing. Your child may be worried about remembering their locker combinations, their identification card, and their schedule. It's actually not as hard as it may sound. I memorized it all in my first month. They are lockers. Your miniature room away from home. But remember, it's not for makeup or toys, it's just for books. The lockers must take a while to get used to, opening and closing. But guess what? Every student has that problem at the beginning of the year. A week before school is open, there are what we call practice lockers. They have papers on them with their combinations. They are for future students to try out them. The principals and teachers and even their friends can help them with big problems on their lockers. Trust me, I know. I hope your child will enjoy the first year of Bell School and the rest of Bell School. Thank you.
Lindsay Tanner is going to speak on scheduling. TNA.
Hello, I'm Lindsay Tanay. I attend West Orchard Elementary School, and I'm currently a 6th grader and representative Team C. I would like to share a few words with you about my 6th grade experience regarding the typical day schedule, the lunch period, and the after-school help that is offered at Bell. Between in-school and after-school activities, it has been a year of great enrichment for me, as I've explored many new interests both socially and academically. For example, I've been involved in the school play, North on this Island, which some of you may have seen this weekend. I'm on the Liberty Bell newspaper staff, and I'm involved with Bell Buddies, the community outreach organization. All of these commitments have allowed me to meet students who have come from the different elementary schools, and I've made many new friends. One of the biggest challenges one has to overcome is adjusting to the Bell's complex scheduling. An average day consists of 8 40-minute periods on a 4-day rotation schedule. There are 3-minute breaks in between passes to provide sufficient passing time. This leaves little time for socializing between classes. However, we somehow manage. The lunch period provides an adequate opportunity to meet with friends. Depending on one's individual schedule, the 6th grader may eat with a variety of people depending on the day of the rotation. In other words, every day is just a little bit different. However, Bell students quickly adjust, and the constant rotation of scheduling breaks up the monotony of the school day. Though it may seem to you as parents that your children will have little interest in spending any additional hours in the school building, each Monday and Wednesday the late buses are packed. Many Bell students are highly ambitious and tend to take the initiative in attending after-school help sessions with their teachers. Most academic teachers stay after from 2:15 to 3 to welcome students for extra help. Students are able to talk to their teachers about what they may find difficult. Also, students may come for guidance regarding their organizational skills. However, these help sessions are not only for students who need clarification with the curriculum. 6th graders enjoy speaking one-on-one with their teachers and listening to their insights and comments. Late buses are then provided to transport students home. Being a 6th grader here at Bell has been exciting and special. The wonderful staff helped make the transition a smooth one, and it has been a challenging year full of much fun and stimulation. I would now like to explain a bit about the schedule. As you can see, on day 1, you have 8 periods. As I mentioned, each are 40 minutes long. We start out with calliope, which is a subject where it alternates every 4th of the year. Each of the teachers teaches a miscellaneous subject. It's very interesting, and the students are really involved with that. One of the calliopes that I'm currently involved with is advertising. skills, and we're putting together a campaign. Then it would be typical for a sixth grader to have a double period in academics. There's 80 minutes with usually a short break in between. Then every fourth of the year, it alternates between art, technology, home and careers, and a new subject they're adding, computer education. Those are also miscellaneous subjects where your kids will learn different skills that will help them in other subjects. Then there will typically be a double period with another academic. Then a language, French, Spanish, or Latin, which the student can choose. And then it's followed by the music or gym. Also, between fifth and sixth periods, there will be a lunch period. And between that, possibly chorus, dance, and orchestra. Thank you. Good evening.
David Portnoy is now going to speak on homework and organization.
Hi, I'm David Portnoy, and I'm a sixth grader on Team J. Last year, I attended the elementary school of Berman. I know one of the biggest dreads and maybe one of the biggest worries your children have about Bell, homework. Yes, it is true, here at Bell, there is still a subject that all kids just absolutely adore. I mean, what could be better than working all day in school and then coming home to a nice, happy homework assignment? But it isn't as bad as you or your child thinks. I mean, they do have to be prepared for a decent amount, but it isn't like their lives will be taken away and sucked up by projects, worksheets, or assignments given by their teachers. Also, the teachers will not give hours of homework on the first night, maybe on the second night, but definitely not on the first. No one has to worry though, because everyone will get used to it. Depending on how your child's schedule is, some nights he or she might have homework in 2 academic subjects. Other nights they might have it in 4. It varies anywhere between 1 to 4 academics. Also, in addition to the homework and academic subjects, your child might also get homework from foreign language and any other specials that they have. In the academics, your child probably won't have more than a half an hour from each, not including long-term assignments and or projects. I also think you should know that sometimes your children's homework will not be due the next day after it's assigned. Unless a specific teacher has a different policy, the homework is not due until the next time you see that teacher. Sometimes it will be the next day, sometimes it will be 2 days after it's assigned. This might be a little different from what your child has had before, maybe not. Here are some tips that I've learned in my own past personal experiences on how to handle and do homework. Number 1, the first and most important tip I can give you and your kids is to do the homework. You can't get transferred if it's not done. Another tip I would give your child is to do it on the night of the assignment. Even if the homework isn't due the next day, it is best to do it that night. The next night, your child will get more homework, and it will be overwhelming if he or she has to do the previous night's work too. Also, sometimes your child will have activities the next night, and he or she won't want extra work. I know that probably everyone has after-school activities such as sports, after-school enrichment, and religious school. But one has to make sure that the homework is not forgotten. Just realize that the activities are there, but so is the homework. One thing I still continue to do is write post-it notes in a place that I frequently walk by or see. That way, if I remember that I have an assignment, that I'm running out to an activity, and I think that the assignment will be forgotten, I have a reminder when I get home. Also, on the topic of remembering assignments, your child also has to complete long-term assignments. Part of doing this is not forgetting to do it until the last minute. No one likes that frantic feeling of, I've got to get it done by tomorrow, what am I going to do? Have your child budget his or her time out so that every night he or she has a little bit of the project to do. Try to get them to have it done sooner than later, but don't have them do it all in one night because you want the maximum amount of effort to go into it. Number 5. One great solution to sometimes having too much work or not understanding the work is to stay for after-school help on Monday or Wednesday. That means that instead of taking the regular bus home, your child will take the late bus. When he or she stays late, he or she can go to the teacher that they need help in and get the help they need. Also, I found that it provides an environment where it's easy to work and there might not be as many distractions as there would be at home. Number 6, the school supplies every child with an agenda. It looks like this. And this is a book where the children write down their assignments. Make sure that they make use of it. A great way to do this is to check their agendas every day or find out what kind of work they have. Then, if work's due, make sure all of it got done. If you see that nothing is ever written in the agenda, contact your child's teacher and see if the child actually had homework. Maybe they didn't. But it's important that if they did, it's written down. This is also a great way for your child to remember to do things. If they ever remember that they have something to do, tell them to write it down. So when they get home, as soon as they check their agenda, it's right there. Make sure that they always check their agenda. One of the easiest ways for them to do homework is to fail to check the agenda. Hopefully your children, as well as yourself, will all have a wonderful experience with their first year middle school. Thank you.
Finally, Hannah Beck is an 8th grader, and she's going to speak about her 3 years here at Bell, her experience.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Hannah Beck, an 8th grader here at Bell, just like this one, filled with mixed emotions. We were excited because I was entering a new stage, but sad because I was leaving a place where I spent most of my school years. And I recently came home from another meeting, this time really filled with similar emotions. Each transition offers new challenges, both academically and socially, and both for the parents and the students. One of the first challenges of Bell is the sheer number of students as compared with elementary school, and having a different teacher for different subjects. The team approach at Bell makes this an easy transition and a wonderful way to learn. Each team has a feeling of community. I remember being so nervous that I wouldn't have any of my Johnson friends on my 6th grade team. And even though I had very few, it worked out for the best because we had plenty of opportunities to interact with members of the other teams, such as anyone to after-school activities. It was also a time for me and my friends from Grappling to introduce each other to our new friends. And now we have a wonderful group representing all 3 schools. Being at Bell has also made me a much more independent student. The study skills, such as note-taking, have helped me all through middle school and will continue to be useful. One system that works for me is taking notes on each chapter in my textbook as they are assigned. In that way, I started my review for the test study and have a study guide already prepared. Many teachers also provide students with study guides as well as their tests, which are not as detailed, but the two work together very well. In Bell, we do a lot of projects in school in all subject areas. One of my favorite projects we did this year was the Immigration Newsletter, which combined English and social studies. We had to research our backgrounds and then write a story about one of our ancestors of that background. I learned how to create a detailed newsletter on the computer and learn about my background and ancestors. Another great project we have done this year was the Environmental Fair, organized by my science teacher, Mr. Luigi, which students saw during a course of 2 days, and parents were invited to attend the meeting. Maybe some of you were even there. This time, we, the students, got to be the teachers because we had to explain and answer questions regarding our topic. Here at Bell, there are many ways to improve the younger as well as older students academically. Although, along with after-school help on Mondays and Wednesdays by the teachers, students help each other through the peer-tutoring program, which I'm involved in. In this program, an 8th grader is assigned to either a 7th or 6th grader. On Tuesdays or Thursdays, depending on the student's choice, the tutor helps the student with various homework assignments, studying for a test, or anything else that the student needs help on. This program is such a success because the kids get to work one-on-one with each other. Also, the tutor has been through 6th and 7th grade already, knows the material and what to expect, but always manages to learn something new when it pops up. To sum up, I'd like to share a few lessons I've learned, ones that the teachers didn't teach. Don't be afraid to introduce yourself to other students. They're probably just as nervous as you are. Don't procrastinate in doing your homework for a long-term project. There's always help if you need it, either after school or early in the morning. Develop good study skills to help you throughout the rest of your education. And finally, take advantage of all the activities that Bell has to offer. Sports, yearbooks, peer tutoring, and so much more. Find at least one thing that really interests you. Thank you for letting me share my experience, and good luck.
I think that you can see why we are smiling when we come up here to present, because we have an opportunity to work with such great students around here. Why don't we give the students another? Thank you. All right, this is just the beginning of that roller coaster ride, remember, and we'll meet again many times. We'll hear from you. Thank you for coming. Good luck. See you in 2 weeks.
behavior. We hope that sample is an important sample of behavior, not meaningless information, but we hope that sample of behavior generalizes back to a classroom so it tells us something about learning and the student. And that sample of behavior is measured in different ways, and that's why we have test scores. And there are different properties associated with those measurements, and we'll probably end up talking a little bit about that at the very end of all the presentation. But how about, Dale, you start next with...
I think I
move this out of the way?
No, we'll do a close. So this I want to welcome everybody here this evening, and I'm glad to be part of this panel. In thinking about the topic, as it was set for demystifying assessment for the speech and language teacher, I realized that we use so many different test instruments across the age levels that it would be very
or they may say pain, complain. What they're doing is they're deleting part of the cluster. And when you start to see patterns, what you end up doing is not trying to intervene sound by sound, but you're working on error patterns. In terms of phonemic awareness, that's an issue that we talk about, it seems a lot at the elementary level, but I'm a middle school therapist and I work with the high school, and it's small units of meaning that change meanings of words, like prefixes and suffixes. And it may be assessed with a question such as, the man ate dinner before watching TV. After having dinner, the man watched TV. The child has to determine are those two sentences the same or are they different. I find when I test students with this kind of task, I pick up a lot of kids who will study and take a test and come home and say, you know, they didn't do well. They didn't do well because questions were asked somewhat different than they actually studied them. Their language is not flexible enough to really see that when things are the same, even though it may be phrased differently or different words may be used semantically, and that's hard for some youngsters with language disability. Another question might be, is this correct? She's the faster runner of them all. That comes from like more of a fifth grade test, and their response needs to be fastest is the correct word. Understanding figurative language or abstract language, that's very important. Developmentally, kids really start developing their abstract language skills more like from sixth grade on. I mean, it's always developing, but that's really where it starts to emerge. A question might be asked like, she runs like lightning. What does that mean? Well, that's an idiomatic expression. We have tons of them in our language. I find generally kids tend to be more familiar with them when they're used in their home. Some parents tend to use them, and others do not. And that I find is relevant to how a family uses those terms. Another question might be, which picture shows the young moon's back rested on the arms of the tall tree? And ultimately, they have to show you it's a picture of a crescent moon, sort of resting on the branches of the tree. And there are lots of tests that try to draw out or get at that more abstract language ability. In terms of the expressive language, clarity and organization are key things that we're really looking for. Clarity is, what the child says, does it match the intent of what they wanted to say? And organization is, how well sequenced is it? And I'm sure you've had experiences with your children where they may come home and, you know, you want them to explain a homework assignment, or you want them to tell you what happened in class, or even explain a movie. And sometimes it can be rather challenging to figure out what they're trying to say. There are formal tasks that we look at, defining words, telling a familiar story. These are the kinds of subtests that we get at getting a little bit more of that expressive language. Word retrieval, pulling words from storage to use in writing and speech. Word retrieval and vocabulary are different issues. To be talking about word retrieval, it has to be a word you already know. If the child doesn't know the word, they can't retrieve it. Okay, so if you're talking about limited vocabulary, that child may not have certain words, they may not be aware of them. However, there are students who have fairly good vocabulary, but their facility with words, their ability to pull them forward for writing or for speech is not there. And there are tests that look at that. The Boston naming test is very often used, naming objects are there books written on how to educate your child at home? There are books written on psychological intervention. What can parents do at home when they recognize some of these deficits in their children? Is there a bibliography for this where parents can be practical, not assessment, but practical intervention? Is there anything written about this? Well, one of the things I've always found, first of all, is that with most things, parents are the first and best diagnostician. They always recognize things about their kids, and very often it's comparatively. You may have had one that was, a very early fast talker, and one who was much slower, or one who, no matter who stood on your head for them to follow directions, and, they know. And very often they come to you with being able to verbalize a lot right away. But all of those kinds of early, literally dinner table kinds of conversations and language stimulation approaches that you take with young children are critical to them. And the bedtime reading and just many daily kinds of tasks that you can do to stimulate language.
Was a relevant question. I suspect that it's going to be relevant, or a similar question is going to be relevant really to everybody's presentation. So maybe we'll talk about it again. Dr. Schwenger talked about education and testing.
I'm just curious, if we could just talk, well, how many people represent the elementary level, the elementary students, how many middle, how many high school? All right, well, typically, the special education teacher is the person who administers the achievement tests that make up the educational evaluation. And in this district, we use two primary tests. We use the Woodcock-Johnson three-test achievement, and we use the Wechsler individual achievement test, otherwise known as the WIAT. These tests measure basically 4 components of educational achievement: reading, writing, mathematics, and language. The tests are very similar in that they're all made up of subtests. They all yield some kind of component or cluster scores. The items are arranged in order of increasing difficulty. And they all yield information about a student's strengths and weaknesses. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you briefly. So in the Woodcock-Johnson, there are actually, you can see that we have the reading, we have the language, we have the math, and the written language. There's a standard battery that's administered that gives us some information about reading, and most often in reading, we're trying to assess a student's decoding and word recognition skills and comprehension skills. In the area of language, we're trying to get some sense of whether a student can understand language and express it in various ways. In math, we're looking at whether a student can compute using 4 major operations. We're looking at basic mathematics skills, as well as the ability to understand mathematical concepts and apply those skills in a problem-solving way. And then we're looking at written language to see whether students can write in some organized fashion using a lot of the things that Gail spoke about, syntax and organization and spelling. Okay? So we give a standard battery, and then we give some extended battery subtests that we feel we're going to get more specific information. The other thing that the Woodcock-Johnson does is it tests academic knowledge in the areas of science, social studies, and humanities. But again, that's part of the extended battery. And we don't often have to give all of these for initial evaluations because it's a suspicion of a handicapping condition. And the other is for triennial testing because every 3 years students in special education must be retested. Then we will give observations about the student's performance during testing, and what Gail said, I have to reiterate that that's very, very crucial. We learn a lot about a student's task approach, whether a student gets easily frustrated, whether a student comes with some anxiety about testing or on particular subtests, what the student's tolerance for frustration is, how impulsively they respond, how cooperative they are. Then we list the tests that are administered, and so you will see the test name and the subtests that were administered, and you will get test results. I think the most important parts are the student's strengths and weaknesses and the recommendations. We're really looking to make the students more successful and efficient learners, and it's very important to pinpoint those strengths and weaknesses so we can provide that information to students, to parents, and to the professionals who work with them. When we give educational test results, I have to say that an educational battery of tests is never used solely to determine a handicapping condition or whether a designation remains appropriate. It must be used in conjunction with evaluations of other professionals. And it's very, very important to look at it only as a piece of a puzzle, that with the speech language tests and with the psychological tests and with information from the classroom teacher and with some background information about the student and the information you provide as parents, we can make a much more appropriate designation. It's very important to help students, parents, and school professionals understand the student's learning style. So for example, if we understand that the student does respond somewhat impulsively and is not really showing their best abilities, we can work on modifying that so the student learns to be more careful and reflective about responding. And the other thing we do is we suggest strategies that may help the student become a more successful learner. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to segue into kind of hypothetical situation. Here's an example of a couple of scenarios of what we might learn from some educational tests and therefore what we might recommend. I've given an example of a student who receives a low listening comprehension score. What we might surmise is that the student has a weak auditory memory. It's difficult for them to take in information auditorily and recall it. And so these are some of the recommendations that we might make. We might teach the student some listening techniques. We might teach the student how to take notes, and when they're sitting in a class and material is presented auditorially, they need to know how to take notes. We might teach them to tape record class lectures. We might provide the student with a set of class notes. We might provide visual input, such as notes on the board or outline visual organizers, etc. And these are very important. We certainly might learn more from other evaluators. And in particular, we might call for an evaluation by or ask for services from a speech language specialist who works on those particular skills. But one thing I want to tell you about is that when we make recommendations, there are two things that we address. We address both the strengths and the weaknesses, so that we are sometimes trying to remediate the weakness. So in this case, if a student has low listening comprehension, by teaching the student how to listen better, how to make eye contact with the speaker, for example, we're working to strengthen the weaker area. When we teach the student note-taking techniques, we're teaching the student to listen for key words that the speaker might be saying, such as this will be on your test, I want you to know this, so the student will be able to take better notes. But we also don't want to frustrate the student, and we want to teach to the strengths and capitalize on those, because that's what makes the student feel good about him or herself. And so by working in the strength, in the modality that's strong, for example, the visual area, and providing these visual inputs like notes or outlines or visual organizers, we're actually doing both. We're coming in from the back door and going into the front. And the same is true here, that if we have discovered that the student has a low reading comprehension score, we might surmise, that the student has weak visual processing, or that the student has a weak vocabulary. There are a lot of different things that go into reading comprehension. I've just taken one piece. So So what we might recommend are books on tape for that student, reading aloud with another person, reading comprehension strategies such as highlighting, post-its, margin notes, using headings as guiding questions, or using context clues to derive meaning. And the same thing here, we might learn more from other evaluators, and more specifically, we might ask for an evaluation by or ask for services from the reading specialist who works, that's the reading specialist specialty is working on reading comprehension. And again, we're looking at strengthening the strengths and remediating the weakness. So a student who has low reading comprehension score, if we give the student books on tape, we are teaching the student to compensate and feel successful and make sure that there are accessible notes for that student, accessible books and accessible materials. But if we give the student reading comprehension strategies, we are working directly to the weakness. We are teaching the student how to read more effectively and more efficiently.
I want to make a comment though that should go, I don't think it should go unnoticed that the presenters, while it's clear they're very expert examiners, are also educators and service providers. And when Gail goes through and if this, maybe then, that's not at all an automatic cookbook, kind of automatic, if this, then that. Gail's, as everyone else, is very skilled at understanding what the different complexities are and really choosing in a very discriminating way and trying out these interventions and the recommendations and using that feedback also. I think that's a real strength of everybody in the district, that we're not just examiners operating in isolation, but that we're also educators, we're also the educators providing the service, accountable to the kids, the parents, and ourselves for the recommendations that we make. Thanks.
Any questions? Yes.
It seems to me that the possible ways to address the examples you had were kind of pragmatic issues to help a person deal with the problem, whatever was the root of the problem. They had to take better notes, focus in on the teacher. Is there another process, though, that goes, I guess, to the other side, which actually addresses the issue of making the person a better listener, or I'm not sure what kind of process I'm thinking of, but it's, instead of telling them to, instead of working like with a younger child, the younger children, it's not necessarily, sometimes it's harder if you have a problem at an early age. Instead of working with them to be better note takers, the issue becomes, why are they bad note takers? Is there a way to get a more ingrained cure? I don't, it's not the right word.
No, but it's a great question. There's a history in special education and intervention that deals with this.
Well, I know one of the things that I deal with all the time is the fact that so many of the things that are hard for our kids, kids that we work with, are very often intuitive to us. You know, people who went to school, very, good students, take, notes all the time, whatever. We never thought about what goes into that task. I once saw in some research, somebody had done a task analysis of note taking. There were like 20 steps involved in what, in order to be effective in that way. And what we continually try to do is break down those processes for kids and try to figure out in this evaluative process where the breakdown occurs. They're not a mess in all the areas. I mean, they usually have strengths in certain areas and weaknesses in others. And the idea is figuring out where did they fall off? Where do they take the misstep? But also what came to mind with what you were saying is very often as the educators with the children, we have to work from two ends, with the child, but also with the instructors. I mean, that's one of the roles that we play, which is sometimes a hard role, which is how do you have to sometimes modify the instructional setting for that child so they can be more successful. So you're teaching them certain skills, but you're also trying to educate
I actually took that apart. I took that impulsivity apart, and I looked at exactly what he was doing. So it wasn't like that. I mean, I can say it, and if I was writing an educational evaluation and some recommendations for this kid, I might say he needs to work on reducing impulsivity. But with this particular student, I looked at the task at which he was being impulsive, and I broke it down and I said, watch what's happening. I want you to read that problem for me. I want you to watch what you do. As soon as you read that question, you start writing before you've been thinking. So I want you to stop for a second and I want you to rehearse in your mind what you're going to do now. And that's what he does. I have him talking out loud to himself, and then working through the process as he goes through it, and he's being more successful. So it's not just that it's really that you have to take apart each particular behavior. If you find a kid has difficulty listening, it might be that they're not making eye contact, or that they are responding or anticipating something you're going to say without waiting. And you might say, stop. I want you to hear my whole sentence, and then you can respond what you think. And sometimes that's enough to just say stop, and put up a signal. And so again, if you break it down and you take a look at how the student is responding to certain situations, it'll be easier to remediate.
Or even some things like teaching kids to visualize while they're listening. And you may start off with just trying to get the youngster to attach to the fact that, that they dream and that they see images when they dream. And then you try to move them to recognizing that rather than just hearing words and words, you see pictures in your mind as you hear the words. And that the act of doing that sometimes just strengthens literally the images so that you can recall things. That's just one example, but those are the kinds of things we do when we work with kids to try to help take them past what seems to be stumbling blocks for them.
Really key to kind of also hear these responses in this discussion because it in some ways also gets to our approach to education and special education. Skill development need not be separate and apart from the academic tasks requiring those skills. We talked about those pragmatic interventions. Yes, they're pragmatic interventions because they're working on classroom tasks, but they're very much involved with the skill development. What was just described was developing those skills necessary to perform those tasks. The history that I made reference to earlier was when special education was in a much more segregated way, and in separate classes or resource rooms or what have you, we emphasized skill development in more isolated ways. Then kids had to generalize those skills back to a classroom. And that was pretty hard. That was pretty hard. So if we can develop skills within the classroom environment, within the classroom tasks in the way that was just described, this turns out to be much more Dr. Chappaqua. Tell us about psychological tests.
I wish I could. I'm going to need, you don't know this, but I'm going to use you. Yes.
They don't know that you're going to use me.
I was sitting there saying, I leaned over to Mary Ellen and I said, where's the whiteboard? I need the whiteboard. And she said, you're going to have to modify on the spot, you're going to have to adjust and differentiate. So I was sitting there thinking, all right, so how do I make this all work? One of the things that I want to mention, and I want to follow up with something that Gail had said about those of us who are practitioners, and Jerry was pointing this out, that we're practitioners as well as evaluators. And psychologists have traditionally been probably the people who are the most mysterious in the building. We have those little kits. We have lots of little kids with very strange little puzzles and all kinds of questions and those great ink blots, that you all hear about. I had a kid recently say to me, we sat down and I said, but today I'm going to give you a very different kind of test. I'm going to show you some ink blots, and I'm just going to ask you what you see in them. And he said, oh, that ink blot test. I've been waiting all my life to take that test. And I thought, oh boy, this is going to be good. And it was. The fact is that we are practitioners, and we have to put ourselves on the line a lot. Taking the knowledge that we have as evaluators and as clinicians, and then applying it in the classroom, not just to kids, but to teachers. Teaching teachers how how to instruct kids that we have information that we've discovered, that we've taken all of these pieces of the puzzle, put them all together and said, okay, now we have this picture of this kid. This is the snapshot we have. And I want to emphasize that. It's a snapshot. Human behavior is very complicated. The human mind is very complicated. Learning is very complicated. Task analysis, when we did task analysis when I was in graduate school the first time through getting a special ed degree, task analysis was a big thing then, to really sit down and to say, what do you need to do all of these things? And I remember one professor telling us we had to take the letter A and just do a task analysis on how a child would write the letter A. And it was fascinating. I mean, all of the components of how you process information go into this. You don't just say, well, all right, I'm going to think about an A and write an A and copy this A. Your child has to have all of the components and all of the readiness in all of these particular areas in order to be able to do that. And if you watch, all of you who have children, and if they're older now, go back and think about what it was like when they were learning these things. Day to day, sometimes hour to hour, I have a soon-to-be 5-year-old. I'm just astounded by the things that she says or does. Every picture is different. She wrote her name the other day, and in every single letter, she drew a different person in the letter. And I said, where did you learn how to do that? She looked at me and she said, Dad, I just knew how to do it. And I thought, okay, you know, this is what learning is all about. When we were talking, you were talking about, you know, these pragmatic kinds of things, and I was thinking, what we're really doing, what we're really trying to do now more and more with all of these evaluations that we do and the information that we gather is to become familiar with learning to learn and thinking about thinking. Because if you can't think of, and the fact of the matter is that we're not that far along. We're doing a lot of brain imaging studies now, and we can see where the blood flows in certain parts of the brain, but we don't know why subtle learning disabilities actually occur. They talk about it, if you read the text, it says there are lesions in the brain. Well, what does that mean? You can't locate them with an MRI. They're so subtle. So we're speculating a lot about what's creating this. I simply chalk it up to, I think it's a nicer way to think about it, is that kids have different wiring. You have different wiring. If you think for a minute about how you read, I just want you to just think for a minute about how you read. How many of you see pictures when you're reading a novel? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 of you. All of you. Now people go, oh yeah, I think it's you see. Think about it. How many of you hear your own voice when you're reading? That's a stylistic difference right there that can affect reading comprehension tremendously. I didn't know people generated pictures when they read. That was a whole new concept to me when I, found out that people saw things. I thought, I don't see anything. The words are there. I hear myself reading the words. Yeah, I know what this character looks like because it says he has brown hair. But people said, don't you get it? Don't you see this character? I never did. I had to learn how to visualize. And for the longest time, I thought that was not a possibility for me until I learned how to go about it. So just that little bit of information about how you become aware of what happens when you read. Think about that when you're talking about your children and the way they read. And I'll bet you never thought to ask them the question, do you hear your own voice or do you see pictures? Or do you have both? Is it integrated? So what I wanted to do is to tell you a little bit about sight testing from a very, hopefully a sort of a different perspective, and this is really very impromptu. And I need my colleagues to help me here. We need 5 chairs with you sitting. Mary Ellen's going, I'm going to kill you, Joe. No, I'm not showing you. I'll show you how to, yeah, trust me. Okay, we're doing this over here. Okay, I need one more. There are certain processes that you have to go through to learn, and then these processes we have to measure in order to find out how people are learning. The first one is if you cannot learn unless you can focus your attention. So Jerry, you can be attention. This is attention. This is the brain. Yes, you can sit there. Here? Yes. This is the brain. And this is the frontal part of the brain that we are learning an awful lot about. My mentor at NYU is a guy by the name of Nick Goldberg, who's just written a book called The Executive Brain. And he's called the guru of the frontal lobes of the brain. We're learning a lot about the frontal lobes of the brain. You're a frontal lobe. But you're not alone. Because after you focus your attention on the information you are learning, you have to be able to organize that information to know where you want to put it. Because it's not just about saying, and how many times you say to your own kids, will you just pay attention? Well, that is not enough. If you just pay attention, it gives you nothing but attention to what is in front of you. But if you don't know what to do with it, what's the sense of attending to it? So you have to attend to it, and then you have to organize it, and that becomes from attention to executive functions. Executive functions are planning functions.
She's very good at that.
Yes, I figured she was. I saw those overheads, I said, there she is. Executive functions are the planning functions and the organization functions. Once you attend to information, the brain then takes over and says, okay, now let's see what I'm going to do with it. How am I going to use this? What categories does it fit into? And then it begins to store the information. Now, granted, this is a very simplistic brain here. No insults intended here. But the next thing we have then is memory. And we'll put that with our language person because they really have this whole thing about memory. It's got to be stored and it's got to go into memory. And memory can be short-term memory. It can be short-term auditory memory, what you hear. Short-term visual memory, what you see. It can be long-term memory, where it goes in, it gets encoded, and it stays there. So one of the things that as a psychologist that I look for when I'm evaluating kids is long-term memory and short-term memory. Because I want to see how kids are able to store their memories. Can they hold on to it in just digits as they get longer, spans of digits? Can they hold on to information that I give them in a mathematics problem without anything in front of them? And use that information and manipulate it, which is something called working memory, as you heard Gail talk about before. So you've got these functions of memory that you've got to really be paying attention to. You've got to see how, and this goes to behavioral observations that my other colleagues have talked about, how someone attends while they're being tested, how someone organizes the information, because it's pretty novel to them in psychological testing. I'm not giving them reading or writing or those things that they're so more familiar with in terms of their academics. I'm giving them novel tasks, put together puzzles. I'm gonna ask you to define some words just at random. Those kinds of things. How is this child storing that information, categorizing it, and then how are they remembering that information? And then we'll branch out into two lobes, and I'll do one of them. This is the, I'm going to take the one that I probably am better at. Probably the one you're better at, too. This would be, let's just say for argument's sake, the left side of the brain, because you're looking at the brain this way. And on the left side of the brain, you have what's it's known for is mostly verbal language ability, practical ability, logical ability. This is where all of that language, those of us who hear our voices when we read, we're probably hearing it from this side of our brains because we're very language oriented. You put something in front of me, for instance, like every few years I get a new computer, and I get it through IBM because my wife works for IBM, and I get it cheap. And we open the box up, and IBM is an international corporation, so it doesn't use words to set up its computers. It has programs which look incredibly simple unless you're a person who relies upon words. And I sit there looking at this like it is a totally foreign language, whereas my wife is very visual. Say, like, what are you talking about? It goes like this. I can't do that. It's not a skill that I have. It's definitely a vulnerability for me. If they write it out for me, I can follow those directions. On that side, we have the right side of the brain, which is our creative side of the brain. This is usually where the nonverbal information is, the visual information. Now, there isn't I wish I could tell you that everything was so finely localized in the brain, but a lot of it is about how it gets integrated and shifted over. And one of the other things that we've discovered in brain function is that it's all about timing, because this is a rapid kind of process. And it's not about, oh, well, one side of my brain is working and the other side isn't, or it's shifting. It's about the timing of the shifts, how it goes back and forth. If you were to slow down that process, you would see, you would be able to see how you're forming images and hearing words, and it's just back and forth. And if you have anything that interrupts that kind of experience for you, you're going to have trouble. You're going to have vulnerabilities in terms of how you learn. So as a psychologist, we look for how these functions are being integrated. What is it that we need to find out about this child that will help you understand why this learning is occurring in the way it is, help the teacher to understand why it's occurring the way it is, and help the child ultimately to understand. Because knowing that information helps you to design interventions. One of the things that probably the foundation of all the psychological evaluations you will see in this district and in most districts is something called the Wechsler Intelligence Scale in the children, the WISC-3. Okay, it is, you know, they could build a shrine to the WISC-3 because it's been around a lot of years, and there it is, and it tells us an awful lot of information. It really does. I don't mean to minimize it or say that it doesn't have utility, because it certainly does for me. I use it as sort of a foundation. On the verbal side of the process, we are measuring things like information that can be explained, long-term memory for information that has been retained, like who was Christopher Columbus. By the way, those of you at the high school level, for the older kids, 16 and up, more 17-ish, they use the adult version of this called WACE, which is the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale. And for 5-year-olds, we use the WIPSI, which is the Wechsler Preschool and Primary Scales of Intelligence. They all have their little acronyms. You'll also see things like the Stanford Binet for those of you who had kids who've gone through the preschool process. That tends to be more of the foundational cognitive test. We're measuring, like I said, thinking. So in this language part of the brain, we're measuring information. We're measuring vocabulary. See, we all sort of interconnect here. That's the thing. That's what's so nice about doing a multidisciplinary evaluation as part of the CSE. And when you've got a good team, which we're very lucky to have, I believe in this district at least, you know, I have to work with you guys districts at different levels, but in my building I feel very fortunate that we have the people that we have. You've got this whole interaction going on. We work together to get key components of information to find out how this child is really learning. So it's vocabulary development, word knowledge, how spontaneous can a child be, categorization of verbal information, taskical similarities. How are a wheel and a ball alike? How are a shoe and a shirt alike? Now that involves this part of the brain too, this executive functions, because you have to categorize, you have to organize it. It involves memory as well, because you have to reach back and remember all of those things that you know about shirts and shoes and put it all together. Comprehension is practical language. Again, dilemmas that would happen in life, and you want to see how the child is problem solving using language. We also look at, there's a subtest on the verbal scale called arithmetic. Arithmetic is, the factor analysis on it has always been a little bit strange, because even though it's a verbal task, because it's given verbally, it mostly tests working memory skills. So you are looking again at memory with that, because you have to manipulate information. There are word problems. A child cannot write anything down. You have to hold on to it, manipulate what they're hearing to add or subtract, or multiply, and then come up with a response.
I would just like to interject one thing, that very often you will notice with some kids, when you're testing them, they do something that we refer to as re-auditorizing, and they will say aloud what you just said, and they do it because they need to run it through their verbal system in order to process it better. And sometimes it's actually a strategy sometimes to teach to kids who may not be doing that, and sometimes you point it out to kids who just may not know they're doing it, and it's a piece of how they learn.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And so this side of the brain really relies on all the language processing. There's something called digit span as well, which is a short-term auditory memory task where you're giving a series of digits, a series that gets gradually longer. The child has to repeat it back to you. First you give them digits forward, and then you ask them to give you digits backwards. You say a string of digits, and then you ask them to repeat them backwards. So that's a working memory task as well. Okay? You're comfortable sitting there?
No, I just want to mention that because Gail just made a pitch for re-auditorizing to stabilize memory, because that's where she is. None of this would work if we weren't paying attention.
That's right.
And attention is required in all aspects of information processing.
Well, that's why I put you up front, Jerry.
I'm just enjoying the metaphor.
And then, if I could put in a little, one of the very important buzzwords, but I think it's a really important process in that special educators use, is the term metacognition, which is really an executive functioning process, which has to do with, I think what Joe was saying, thinking about thinking, understanding the processes that you're going through. And so if reauditorization is something that's really important, an important strategy for making somebody a more efficient and effective learner, that student has to be aware of that and be put on a more metacognitive level. So.
See what this does when you start to put it out there like this? The good thing about this, though, is that what I'm hoping you see is that, and in a very simplistic way, of course, that these are components of learning. And if you can find out where it's going awry, then you can work on that component. If it's attention, and God knows in today's day and age, it's, ADD is, is there anybody that isn't? I mean, that whole attentional piece is so important. But if you don't grab attention, you're not going to get these other things sort of pulling themselves in. We had a kid that came to committee who was, there was this concern about the lack of ability to do extensive assignments, and writing wasn't good, the reading wasn't coming along well. Well, there wasn't really a learning disability that we could identify at this particular time. But attentional processes were problematic. Now, there's a lot of things that go along with, dealing with attention and getting people to understand about ADD, and some people have one feeling about medication and other people have other feelings about medication, and I'm just there for people to get in touch with their feelings about all those things in any event. When the parent got to the place of deciding to do medication with this child, it was like this was the poster kid for Ritalin. It was an amazing transformation. The teacher was pulling me down and saying, "Look at this. I cannot believe it. Everything is completed. It's absolutely beautiful. I've never seen anything like it. The reading has taken off." Now, do I believe that it will be just attention? I don't know. Down the line, there may be some other things that are going to go on for this kid, because attention is usually just not all by itself. But there are those kids who do have some of that. So we'll be watching. The right side of the brain created, she's my boss, she's very creative. Lots of wonderful ideas about the department. Anyway, there are things like how you visualize, how you pay attention to visual details. Picture completion is one of the tasks on the WISP, where you have to choose, you look at a picture that's a familiar picture supposedly, unless you come from some other country that maybe you haven't seen some of these things. But there might be a familiar picture there, and a part of the picture is missing the detail, an essential You have to go back into your memory, and you have to compare an internal visualization, let's say of a cat that's on there. You're looking at this cat that has half the whiskers missing, and in your brain that has two sides of the whiskers. Except my cat doesn't. But I just realized that. But anyway, that's a task of visual attention and really paying great attention to detail. There are tasks such as picture arrangement where you are sequencing visual information. Cards that, when you put them in the right order, give you a story that makes sense. And you're looking at how a child processes that. And when their responses come out that they're backwards, maybe they mix up the beginning and the end, and that's sort of a pattern they're going to, you're going to wonder about how they see the world perceptually. Are they starting backward? Because that gives you a whole clue as to why, gee, no wonder my kid can't get these directions down, because it doesn't make sense. Tasks such as putting puzzles together, object assembly. That's how you take a look at the pieces of something, and in your head, before you even put it together, say, oh, I know what that is. It's a car. The gestalt, if I stick all of these together the right way, will give me a car. Well, that's a skill. That's a visual skill. How many of us have looked at abstract paintings and said, well, I don't know if I put all that together in some way, what it will mean. But it's an important skill to have, to be able to visualize and put it together. It also affects your planning and organization, because you can see how you're going to get to that goal out there if you know how the pieces will fit. More visually abstract information is tapped on a task called block design, where you have a two-dimensional pictorial representation of blocks in different designs. And you're given the child is given the actual blocks to put together to replicate those designs on the cards. Now that's less familiar than puzzles of a cat or a car or a person. This tells you, can this child abstract even more? Can they perceive the color differences, the pattern differences, the form differences? Well, if they can't, then that may be some reason why their reading is so faulty, because they're not getting how the patterns of letters go. Or their writing may be very poor. There's also a processing speed task on this, which is a coding task. It's a novel task. Some kids do extremely well on it because it's a time task. They go through and they have to code, and there's a key at the top, and you time them for 2 minutes, and they get through it. It's fine. Some kids don't like that task. More creative kids, you need a kid who's got really tremendous intelligence, and that's the one task that's on the ground. It's usually because it's boring. That's not something that they find very interesting. So that's sort of like the overview of the foundation of cognition and thinking that we look at in psychological testing. Aside from that, then once we've got the foundation, we look at other ways of confirming our hypotheses. We may give other tasks of visual processing to see if the child is coming out the same way in other kinds of visual processing tasks, or in verbal processing, or auditory processing, or attention, or executive function. We might look at visual motor integration to see how a child can copy, so that we're really getting a sense of that kind of perception. And of course, the other thing that we always look at, that we try to look at, and through observation as psychologists, or through rating scales, or projective testing like the Rorschach, or something called the TAT, where a child has to generate stories given a picture. We look at their emotional function, how they're responding to their environment, what might be on their minds, why might they be not performing. Sometimes it's not about the way they're learning per se, it's about their other thoughts that get in the way of their learning. And high-functioning kids in a high-functioning community have a lot of anxiety about their lives and how to keep up. And that kind of anxiety plays out sometimes as the expectation rises. They feel they need to rise to that expectation. Nothing wrong with that, except that when it starts to get distorted, and kids begin to start to feel very at odds with a value system that maybe they're not sure that they can match. I am in classrooms an awful lot, working with the teachers directly on these kinds of things. It's great to be a psychologist because you get to do a lot of that kind of work. And kids also come in and feel free to come in and talk